All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome in. So the Jets just wrapped up their OTA practice, voluntary OTA, that was open to the media, and I wanted to kind of go over some of the things that transpired. Some pretty encouraging stuff. Right now, let's start again with Aaron Rodgers here. We talked about him before in the Saleh video, where Saleh pretty much said that it's a full go. Right? There's not any sort of holdups from the organization or the coaching staff. From the Jets' perspective, everything that they're going to put on Aaron Rodgers is totally fine, and Rodgers should be able to handle that. And then we look at how Rodgers performed today, according to the Jets beat writers, and he was electric. Supposedly, he had a couple of really nice throws, a couple of touchdown passes, super efficient, and of course, by the way, just for context, voluntary OTAs in May, no pads, no big contact or anything like that. Of course, it's going to be pretty clean through the air, but still, it's nice to get out on the right foot, right? The draft is over, free agency, or I guess I should say the first couple of waves of free agency are over with. We got training camp in the crosshairs, right, in weeks, pretty much. Let's get these voluntary OTAs done and over with on a positive note, and that's exactly what Aaron Rodgers did today. According to Zach Rosenblatt, he was on fire early on, 5 for 5 and 7 on sevens. Something else that I thought was pretty cool was there's a few videos floating around the internet of Rodgers working with different teammates. There was one in particular where he was just giving his 2 cents to the running back room. It looked to me like he was kind of discussing how he likes to hand the football off in shotgun. And you just had this big group of running backs. You had the backup quarterbacks behind Aaron. It looked like Aaron was the coach out there, right? And it's just cool to see. And again, we're talking about a conversation at an NFL practice. I completely get it for context purposes. But for me, I gotta be honest, it's cool to see Aaron Rodgers as the face of the franchise, the leader of the football team, somebody who, I feel like constantly gets labeled as a bad teammate, go out there and continuously prove people wrong in that regard, right? Like, it doesn't matter if you're talking to a Jets coach or talking to a Jets player or reading articles or watching interviews or whatever the case is, nobody, I haven't heard one single Jets player say anything poor about Rodgers or one Jets coach say anything bad about Aaron Rodgers. So it's really cool to kind of just see him out there. I mean, he doesn't have to be there out in May at voluntary OTAs, but he is, right? So, of course, it was the case last year, but it's happening again. All I'm saying, I like the... I just like it, right? I like it from Rodgers' perspective. I like it from the Jets' perspective. I love it as a fan, from a fan's perspective. Now, in regards to who played and who didn't play, there was a couple of no-shows at the voluntary OTAs. Breece Hall, Quinnen Williams, and Hassan Reddick, according to Rich Cimini. And then there was actually a couple players in the injured area, so they were there but not working. Leki Fotu, John Simpson, and Morgan Moses. And of course, we did get the update from Saleh about, before practice kicked off, about AVT not being cleared and Mike Williams not being cleared as of right now. That should change this offseason at some point. But as of right now, the Jets aren't 100% healthy. I mean, it is what it is. Again, we're in late May here. If this was late July, if this was midway through August and we had... the three of the starting offensive linemen out and not performing, yeah, it would be a major issue. But as of right now, just get healthy. That's really all I can say on that. One cool positive was apparently Tyron Smith looked really good. And Tyron Smith is somebody who constantly misses time. He's constantly battling injury. This isn't just like a Bakhtiari situation where it's Bakhtiari's knee. And he's had multiple surgeries on it. He's missed a lot of time because of it. With Tyron Smith, he's dealt with multiple things, right? The neck, the back, hamstring has been another injury that Tyron has experienced. And you look at his contract, which is heavily incentive-based, and then you combine that with the rumor, which was that there was only 2 teams throughout the process that had interest in Tyron Smith, actually, realistically bringing him in. It was the Jets and the Cowboys, and Tyron Smith picked the Jets. So, to see Tyron Smith out there performing well, looking fully healthy, is a positive. Now, one last thing regarding the players before we get to the coordinator press conferences post-practice. But supposedly Eric Watts had a good day. He was turning some heads, and Eric Watts, former defensive lineman from UConn, was a guy that was projected to be drafted. This was somebody who the Jets gave a really, really big undrafted free agent contract to. I believe he was actually the highest paid UDFA that the Jets made, or that the Jets brought in. And you're looking at the D-line. Of course, we have big names. Of course, we have star players. Of course, we have big contracts there. But you kind of feel, as at least for me, that we don't have the depth on the inside as we've had in previous years. Yes, of course, Quinnen and Kinlaw, Solomon's back. But you're kind of hoping for at least one of these young guys. No more Al Woods, no more Quentin Jefferson, no more JFM. You're kind of hoping that one of these guys steps up and grows and turns into a rotational piece, which I'm confident there will be somebody that does that. But the Jets brought in Leonard Taylor from Miami and Eric Watts as well, again from UConn. Those two, for me, are the neck and neck leaders on who is going to get that last spot on the defensive line here. One name I feel like is worth mentioning is Perion Winfrey. I don't know if he's going to be back with the Jets, but they spoke really, really highly of him when they initially picked him up and kind of what he was able to do during his time with the Jets last season. So it'll be interesting to kind of see what happens there, but again, Eric Watts turning heads on day 2 of OTAs. Now, shifting gears and looking at the Jeff Ulbrich press conference, this is something that was really, really cool, right? I think Ulbrich is such a vital piece to this Jets coaching staff. To me, he's the person that, I never question leadership. I never question if this guy knows what he's doing. I never question play calling. I never question game planning. And granted, the Jets defense is stacked, and the Jets defense hasn't had the same injury concerns as the offense. But with that said, I could definitely seeing Jeff Ulbrich becoming a head coach one day, probably sooner rather than later, unfortunately for us. But funny enough, he was actually asked about potentially leaving the Jets and going to the San Francisco 49ers as their new defensive coordinator. And Ulbrich said he loves it with New York, and it's going to be really, quote unquote, it's really hard to leave. And he said that he's happy and fulfilled with the Jets. His family likes New Jersey, and also added that it would have been really hard to leave. And Ulbrich is somebody who hasn't really shied away from the comments or the questions about turning into a head coach one day. But I mean, personally, I can't, get mad at Ulbrich for eventually wanting to leave the Jets and become a head coach. But as of right now, if he loves being here, if it's going to be hard to leave, in his words, then freaking awesome. Right? I love Jeff Ulbrich. He also seems like a guy too that maximizes players' potential. I mean, even in Atlanta, I remember talking to a couple Falcons fans when he took over as interim DC with Raheem Morris at head coach when they parted ways with Dan Quinn. And everybody's like, hey, man, the defense started to perk up a little bit. Guys were just flying around, and you just saw a little bit more energy. It seemed like everybody had a bigger motor. And that's exactly what we're seeing from Jeff Ulbrich and this Jets defense. So I couldn't be happier with Ulbrich, his play calling, his game planning, the whole thing. I love Jeff Ulbrich. Another thing that he had to say was that Isaiah Oliver, who was a former cornerback with him in Atlanta, former second-round pick, he's actually going to be changing his position from corner to safety. Now, why this is interesting is because you're looking at the safety position right now, and it's not a set-in-stone room. We have a bunch of guys there with 2 open spots. I would lean towards Tony Adams starting free safety and Chuck Clark starting strong safety. Ashton Davis is that third guy. But they drafted Bernard Converse in last year's class out of Oklahoma State and LSU. They drafted Key, last pick in the draft, out of Alabama. I don't really see the Jets cutting Adams or Ashton Davis if you just brought him back, or Chuck Clark even. So it's a pretty, I would say, crowded room as far as just the names at the position right now. And again, it's May. We're going to have to trim down the roster at some point. But because we're moving him there so early, right, before mandatory camp, before training camp, before preseason, That tells me that the coaching staff, A, feels great about the corner position. Secondly, you're getting him into a new position early on so he actually has a chance to succeed. You're not just, pushing him over there. All right, we're going to take you from corner and safety. There's 3 weeks left of camp. Go and press us. Go win the job. It's not the case, right? They're actually giving Oliver a fair shot. And then C, here's a question, right? Does this take the Jets out of the market for a veteran safety? I don't think so. I think if it came down to it, and Justin Simmons is down to come to New York and accept the terms that the Jets, because let's face it, the Jets don't have $50 million in cap space. If he's down to take a little less and sign with the Jets, yeah, I don't see New York turning that down. Same with Quandre Diggs. Same with a couple other veteran safeties out there. But an interesting little bit of information here from Jeff Ulbrich regarding Isaiah Oliver's position. Now, moving on to Nathaniel Hackett, right, in his press conference. And the Hackett press conferences, to me, I always try to watch every single second of them just because of the amount of questions that I naturally have offensively, right, with just the lack of production, the questions with calling a game, the questions with planning games. I don't even want to rehash all the numbers and the team ranks and all that kind of stuff from 2023. I don't want to get into it. I'm trying to focus on 2024 here. But again, Hackett met with the media and had some things to say. The media didn't really let up, in my opinion, with the questions that they were asking. One of which was regarding Saleh's belief in him as an offensive coordinator, and Hackett's response was yes. Now, when the question came up of the offseason reports about potentially, bringing in an offensive overseer, and just such a weird dynamic, but like Hackett would get like a demotion, but keep the offensive coordinator title, but the play calling would still be up in the air, and you would have like a senior advisor. Just something that NFL teams just don't do. Hackett said, I don't know what those reports are, and I don't know where the their sources came from. I know what happened with us, and it was great. We had a lot of conversations and got to talk with a lot of different people. It's that simple. It's already been addressed. And as we all know, the Jets didn't make a move in that position. We added one coach to the staff, and it was somebody with zero NFL coaching experience. He's actually brought it from New Hampshire. So personally, I like Doug Marrone. I believe he's still out there. I would like to see him added, but I just don't feel like at this point in time the Jets are going to be adding another offensive mind, especially post-draft. It just doesn't make much sense. You feel like if a move was going to be done, it was probably going to be done within the first 2 to 3 months of the offseason to kind of prep for free agency and whatnot. But yeah, there's a lot of faith being put in Nathaniel Hackett, so we'll see how it plays out. And in regards to the biggest lesson that he learned from last season was that, in his words, that we faced a lot of change, and it was a great opportunity for a lot of guys to learn. So moving forward into 2024, they have to be able to do a better job in specific areas. So, man, I think this season is going to be, really this offseason is going to be crazy with the amount of storylines and positional battles and everything. There's, I don't really feel like there's as much hype around the team this go around compared to last year. It's the fires aren't, going berserk, but it's still there. And you just look at names on paper from like a Madden perspective, the Jets are stacked. Talk about a team with, like, how many teams can say, if everybody stays healthy, we're going to have a top 3 defense. In my opinion, I know I'm a Jet fan, but in my opinion, the Jets will have the number 1 defense in football. I just can't. We just have so many different things. The only area that I feel like we can struggle in is stopping the run. That's the area of concern for me. But, will that derail the defense completely? No, I don't think so. But again, a top 3 defense in football. You got Aaron Rodgers at quarterback. You have a young stable of running backs. You have multiple upgrades on the offensive line. You have playmakers at the wide receiver position. Corley, Garrett Wilson. We'll see what the health status is for Mike Williams as we kind of move throughout the course of the offseason. A couple of good tight ends, one of which in Jeremy Ruckert, who's a young up-and-comer. I really like this Jets team on paper, right? I think the question, though, the questions about this team aren't the play, the on-field performance. It's A, health, B, leadership, right? Because we saw when things didn't really go well, when the Jets faced adversity last year, they just crumbled. Not every player, right? Not every single coach did. But from the pivotal pieces, the Salas, the Hacketts, the Zach Wilsons, guys like that, it just Joe Douglas even, they fell apart. Like, they got decked in the mouth, they didn't get back up. So, can we battle back this season if things like that pop up? That's the question for me. And of course, health, but that's kind of out of the control of New York. But that's gonna do it for me. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. Thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and as always, go Jets.